Brought to you direct from Studio 3B at Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods, the American Hardwood Advisor is your source for trends, tips, and insights into how the building industry has evolved. Join me, Steve Stack, along with guest builders and industry leaders as we talk shop and go in depth on what it takes to be the best of the best. Dive into topics like architecture, industry trends, project plans, historical tools, tricks of the trade, and life's lessons from more than 6 decades of experience in the hardwood lumber business. Hey, welcome back everybody. Steve Stack, Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods, back here at one of our favorite places, Studio 3B. And today we have one of our favorite people back into the studio, and that would be Mr. Mike Jenkins. Mike, welcome back.
Thanks, sir.
Appreciate it.
I love to talk tools.
And you're so good at it. We love having you. Every time you are here, every time you step foot on this property, we learn something. So some of the tools we get into more details about, but today on that beautiful woodworker's bench that we call an interview desk,
yes,
we've got an array of tools laid out, and we're just going to go through and we're going to pick your expertise and just walk us through some of these tools. You know, I'm just thinking, comes to guys in their shops, you know, the old adage, the guys with the most tools wins. And,
I've heard that.
And it's the same thing back in the day. And I used to see those big, I won't even call it a work box, a trunk, and that was the guy's livelihood.
Big tool chest.
Right? The old tool chest. Go from job to job, and if he needed it, it traveled with him. So that's cool. And we've just picked out from our collection and some of your collection, some different tools, and I see a name that goes from, and you can give me the dating on it. When was Stanley Tools formed?
I think it was originally established around 1850. They're still in business, but I don't think they're making much in the way of woodworking tools now.
Okay, so then I have a 2022 Stanley tape measure.
Yes, possibly not made in America.
Possibly, very possible. This is my favorite though. That's the only thing you'll see hanging on my belt. But with that, we've got some cool stuff here.
Yeah.
You like that one?
This is called a crate hammer, and it was used to open up crates. It says on one side here, Tomahawk, which was the name of some product. On the back, it says it was made by the Bridgeport Hardware Company. Bridgeport made a lot of them. I've seen them marked with different manufacturers. Clark Bars is one of the ones. But anyway, the hammer is intended so you can hammer the lid back on the crate. This so you can pry it open if you need to. The hatchet, I guess, if you needed to do some trimming. This is a nail puller, and this is a nail puller.
So you could find them about anywhere, but yes. Very much so like dock workers, warehouse workers,
warehousemen,
right?
Yes.
And so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5 tools in one.
Yes, a multi-tool.
Multi-tool, yes, and hanging on your belt hoop on your blue jeans and go to work.
Yep.
Right? That in a lunchbox, you get a day and put in behind you. Another striking instrument.
Another edge tool, a little small hatchet, possibly used around the house to, maybe start to chip up some kindling for the wood-burning stove in the kitchen. It's dual purpose. It also has a peen here so that you can hammer a nail if you need to. Sometimes you'll see these with a little notch cut out, and that's a nail puller, but this doesn't have that feature.
What would, and just guessing, we didn't find any identifying marks on that. Nothing that we're going to be able to make.
No.
What circa is that?
Hard to date that. It could be as early as 1880, could be 1920. That's a pretty wide range.
So it's got some age to it, though.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Well, you think about 1920, it's 100 years old.
Yeah, exactly. You have that Stanley level in front of you. When did those come about?
Well, I can cheat and look at the patent date on here. It says 1894 was when it was patented. This is the number 95. Looks like it's about 24, 26 inches long. I would say this is probably a cherry body, but the interesting thing about this level is it's brass bound. It has brass on the ends and on all of the edges. There's a little piece of brass there, and that keeps the wood from being worn down too much. And it's got a bubble here and a bubble here, so you can use it on the door jamb to see if the door jamb is right. You can put it here to make sure that whatever you're measuring is level.
So plumb and level.
Yes.
Along with that, and we've got them floating around here somewhere. There he is, right there.
This is another level, but it's a much smaller one. Very lightweight. That's an aluminum body. And this would be suspended from just a string, and it would be a means of determining whether the string at that end and this end are at the same height, possibly used in bricklaying or something like that.
So that's nice, especially for long distances, if you need two points to generate that
Yes.
horizontal line, that level line.
And this is nice because it's in the original tin container.
So from levels, we got everything level, and we're ready to move on our project. One of the other necessities of carpentry or woodworking is a square.
You need to make sure the wood is square. And you put this on the edge of a board, and if you can see daylight underneath the edge, it's not square. So you get your plane out and you keep working at it until there's no daylight that comes through.
All right, so then let's shift gears, and we're we're looking for bracing inside a cabinetry, or we're looking at rafter cuts, tail cuts. This might come into play.
Yep, this is another example of a bevel. This is made by Stanley. This is a little larger than most, but again, if you're doing rafter work and you need to cut duplicates, you set this at one angle and now you mark, and all of your angles are going to be exactly the same, assuming
you leave it at that angle, you don't mess with it, you have your template gauge
right
for all of your tail cuts.
And if you are a good sawyer, then all of your cuts will be true.
Huh. Okay, you mentioned cutting, and this, as far as what's on the table right now, it's one of my favorites. Stair parts and components are a very important part of products that we manufacture here at Baird Brothers. Stairs are sometimes considered the nucleus of a home. And for a nice set of stairs, you have to have precision construction installation. And back in the day, they knew how to do it. Tell us about that little guy.
This is called a stair saw. It's got an adjustable depth blade. We can release these, loosen up these two screws, and the blade will come out perhaps half an inch more, maybe 3/4 of an inch total depth, or you can recess it to have a 1/4 inch or so. And the purpose of this was to cut two parallel lines in the stringers of a stairway so that the stair treads would fit into it. And this was an essential component for a house carpenter's toolkit. Had to have that.
Yeah, if you were a stair builder, you wanted one of those. And today, that would commonly be replaced with
A router. Probably, yes.
A router and a template, and you're dadoing into the side of the stringer or skirt board. so you get good engagement from the step tread into the stringer or skirt board, and that helps accomplish a nice quiet set of stairs when traveled upon. And they recognized that back in the day.
And the reason the depth has to be consistent is you want all of your stair treads to be the same width. And if your dados are a little deeper over here or a little shallower, the same size tread is not necessarily going to fit. So you need to have a uniformity of the stair tread width.
So, and I'm thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, this is another one of my favorites, only because of how delicate it is. There are braces of all sizes and shapes, but that I would think would have been more of a furniture maker's or a finished carpenter's type of brace.
I would agree. It's they call it an unpledged brace. Sometimes you'll find them with some brass reinforcements here. That's called a pledged brace. This is unpledged, but it has a brass chuck. It has an interesting bit here. The bit, this is actually a countersink bit. So once you drill your hole, this can countersink a space for the screw to sink in and not be proud of the work surface.
And you mentioned wood screws, and for anybody that has ever worked with antique furniture, the wood screw, the shape was very common, very consistent.
Yes.
And if you look at the head of that bit, that is set up perfectly for the tapered wood screw,
The tapered head.
the flange shoulder, and then the flat head.
Right.
So again, by changing your bits, using that bit, you have a specialty piece of equipment for installing wood screws.
Yes. And,
Interesting.
And this is probably English made. They didn't make too many of them in the U.S. Most of them were made in England.
So this is mid-late 1800s?
Mid-1800s, 1850, 1870, something like that.
Interesting. And so the age of that, the delicacy of this, we look at it, or I look at it in my mind, and with the grain orientation running this way, you would think these would be two weak points.
And they are, and sometimes that's what the brass reinforcement was for.
Originally.
Yeah.
Well, we're lucky we found this one intact.
Right.
Okay, so you brought a piece along today that goes right into Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods molding manufacturing, and that would be?
This is called a Cornish Plane. And you can see that the bottom is not square to the sides. It has a shaped edge, and this would be used to cut a decorative molding. You'll notice it has a hole in the middle here, possibly for an apprentice rope. If you're using this on a piece of wood, it takes several passes before you get deep enough to get the entire profile. That takes a lot of energy. So the master craftsman who is handling the handle and guiding the plane will have a helper help by pulling along the length of the board that you're cutting. And this is probably, I would say this is an 1840s profile that you'd see on a piece of furniture perhaps.
That is interesting in the fact that you've shared with us a crown molder plane. Yes. And you introduced the idea of using a rope through that particular cornice mold.
Yes.
But on the crown plane,
there were handles.
There was handles for the apprentice or the helper.
And the handle would probably be beneficial in terms of stability.
Control.
Yes. Maybe originally there was a handle that went in here instead of a rope.
Interesting, interesting. There was nothing easy about making moldings back in the 1800s.
It was a time-consuming, labor-intensive process.
And everything from a stack of air-dried, rough-sawn lumber, that's where you started.
Scary process to think of today.
Okay, so in receiving that stack of rough-sawn lumber and your want list for the day,
The first step is going to be using something like this. This originally would have had a horn that would have been up, perhaps another 1.5 inches. And the purpose of this was to go through and rough smooth the saw kerfs out of your sawn lumber that came from the sawmill.
right?
And this doesn't necessarily give you a smooth surface, but it's smooth enough that you could use a regular, now a bench plane, to flatten it out and get it ready for preparation.
Okay, so now we have the first layer of saw kerfs knocked down.
Yep.
And a couple things are a layout man's friend in creating straight lines. One would be a string, okay? And the other, once I accomplish a straight edge, now I want to accomplish a consistent width. Mm-hmm. What type of tool would you use to lay markings down to create a consistent width?
Well, something like this. This is a panel gauge, but it has a sharp point here and an adjustable fence. So you can lock the fence in place on the stem, and then you can draw this down. Assuming you have one straight edge, you put this over the edge, and then
so that's your fence guide.
Yes. And then you can mark the board, the width, and then the next step would be a saw to go ahead and saw it to width.
And now at that point you're ready for your cornice molding cutter or your crown mold cutter now that you've got consistent width.
Well, and you have to make sure it's square, so we had the square in there too.
Yeah. The other marking gauge.
This is called a mortise gauge, not a marking gauge. And you can see it originally had 2 little points here. And this was used, this is an adjustable tool, so I can move this one point, and this would be used to mark out a mortise. A mortise is a rectangular or sometimes square hole that a tenon would fit into, and you needed to have the edges of the mortise marked, and this is the mortise gauge that would be used for that.
Interesting. So depending on the size of your stock, the size of your tenon, that would determine the size of the mortise hole that you wanted to accomplish.
Yes.
And that's all adjustable.
Yes.
Very interesting. Do you know a guy by the name of Red? I don't know anybody. Oh, I do. I have a buddy named Red, but he's not a carpenter.
I know. I know what Red owned. This is a
Red was pretty proud of that.
This is a spokeshave. It's a little nicer than some because it's got an adjustable feature on the blade, so you can modify the how thick of a shaving you're going to cut with these screws. In the old days, when everyone was showing up, you might have a half a dozen carpenters working in a house, and everyone had a spokeshave. Well, Red carved his name in this one to make sure that, by golly, no one else was going to go home with Red spokeshave.
And just as a reminder to the folks listening to us today, the podcast is also available on YouTube, and they can join in and watch us having conversation about antique tools, or they can listen to us on their devices. And that's all available through our social, the Facebook, the Instagram, all of it. Or just as important and easy to access, the content studio here at Studio 3B and our workshop is available right off our homepage at bairdbrothers.com. You can click on it, it'll bring you right to the studio, and all of our American Hardwood Advisor podcast series, they're available right there. They're living on that page, ready for people to enjoy.
Neat.
And in the case of you being here and we've just started talking tools. We're going to have some interesting stuff coming up.
I look forward to it.
We have a bunch of stuff to cover. We're going from post and beam construction and tools they use to that, to some of the finished carpentry tools and furniture builders tools that we've seen. One of the neat things that you made us aware of was the group of users that are out there using these tools today to recreate some of the moldings, some of the furniture pieces.
There are even craftsmen making post and beam constructed buildings.
I know you enjoy woodworking yourself, and I don't get to do it nearly as much as I would like to. But you and I were having a discussion, and the satisfaction, the feel of accomplishment when with your hands and your eyes you create a piece of furniture. It could be a very simple piece of furniture, primitive. It can be Victorian. But in knowing that there was no extension cord to plug in, you did it with the tools in your hands. And at the end of it, you know, we talked and you enlightened us in previous conversation. They didn't have sandpaper. They had one or two of these. Tell us about that.
This is a scraper, and it's an interesting scraper because it's an adjustable. You can adjust, well, this is a little stiff now. Yeah, there it goes. You can adjust the angle, and you would use this to scrape down the final roughness created by your plane and make a nice smooth surface on a tabletop or any piece of furniture that needed a flat surface.
And you and I have spoke. The four-sided head was very common. A triangular head was common. Even today, on some of our curved handrail components,
and you will see that on these too.
You'll get a profiled head to follow the profile of the molding. So if you drag it, it knocks down that grain. It gives it that final sheen.
Yep.
And you're ready for finish. They didn't do anything easy.
They didn't have any way to do it easy.
Exactly. You know, now this would be replaced by a 4x4 or a 4-inch orbital palm sander, battery operated, and just go about it.
Right.
Yeah. So this was when you wanted the lighter day at work.
Right.
After you spent a couple days with the
I don't know.
Cornish mold.
You start scraping with that for a couple of hours, and your shoulders feel it.
We've talked our way through a lot of these, but
this is they call it a 4-fold 2-foot rule. It's not really 4 folds, but it's got 4 legs, and it's 2 feet long. This is a Stanley number 62 made by Stanley, and it's brass bound. So you've got brass on the edge and brass on the interior. So that means that the wood doesn't show a whole lot of wear. And this was an essential tool in a carpenter's kit. Frequently carried it with him. You frequently will find these with the numbers almost worn off on the outside because of pocket wear. But this is a 4-fold 2-foot. The next one is a 4-fold 1-foot, and it has a caliper with it too. So depending on what your skill was or what piece you're working on, you would carry either the 4-fold 2-foot or the 4-fold 1-foot.
And either one of these was at the ready in your pocket.
Yes.
So to that, at some point, we graduated to something like that.
And this is also a carpenter's handy rule, and you got to be careful the way you operate this. I was telling Steve earlier that the first time I saw one of these, I didn't realize how you opened it, so I pulled it this way, and my dad's cabinet maker was rather upset with me when it came apart. But anyway, this is a 6-foot long rule, and it opens up to whatever length that you need within 6 feet.
Now, and I'm trying to go off of memory here. I see some red on the outermost part. Is that a Lufkin or?
No, this is a Stanley.
That's a Stanley also?
But it's called a zigzag rule because you open it like a bunch of Z's. And it's worn, but I'm sure that's a Stanley extension rule. And it has a caliper. So
For a little more intricate work.
Well, for inside measure.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then that evolved into what is used frequently today, which is not a rule, this is a tape measure, a flexible piece of steel. You can lock it in place, and everyone who's building houses today will have one of these clipped to their belt.
And we jumped over it, and I wish I would have thought to bring it in. I have one at home. It's probably a 3-inch canister, about 3/4 thick, and it's a tape measure, sometimes cloth, other times metal. But the neat thing about it, on the side of it, it has what looks like an old rotary phone dial to wind it back up.
Sure.
Yeah, and we'll get it in the shop and we'll show the folks one of these days.
That was before they had a spring.
Yes, exactly. I don't know. We've had a nice conversation here, and I appreciate you coming, sharing your knowledge of these tools. You're approaching 50 years of and I'm going to say enjoying antique woodworking tools, learning about antique woodworking tools, using antique woodworking tools. And we want to invite you folks to follow along. We're going to have quite a few more good conversations with Mike. And once we get a little more confidence and we get our workshop, I get a little more confidence, you have the confidence. We get our workshop up and running a little bit. We make moldings all the time. We do it a little bit different. But I really want to try my hand at some of these smaller, more delicate molding planes.
Or bring in your Stanley 45 and we'll learn how to use it.
We're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. I'm gonna dig him out, get the wood case and bring him along, and you're gonna have to show me how to operate it, because there's a few adjustments on them. Not terrible, but a few. So, Mike, again, thank you for coming down from Kent, Ohio, down to Canfield and visiting Studio 3B.
My pleasure, Steve.
Lending your expertise, and man, I look forward to the next one. Thanks, buddy.
Me too.
Folks, until next time, for Mike Jenkins, Steve Stack, Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods, Studio 3B, follow along, learn with me. For all you folks listening, thanks for talking shop with Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date with the American Hardwood Advisor series, give us a like and subscribe. For more tips, projects, and inspiration, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or at bairdbrothers.com. Until next time,